This is Brad Keithley, Managing Director of Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Welcome to the weekly Top 3, the top 3 things on our mind here at Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets for the week of March 3rd, 2025. The weekly Top 3 is a regular segment on The Michael Dukes Show. The show broadcasts on both Facebook Live and YouTube Live, as well as via streaming audio from the show's website, weekdays from 6 to 8 a.m. I join Michael weekly in the first hour of Tuesday's show from 6:10 to 7 a.m. for a discussion between the two of us about our 3 issues. We post the podcast of our discussion following the show on the Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets Facebook, YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, and Substack pages, also on the Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets website, as well as the projects page on national blog site medium.com. You can find past episodes of the weekly Top 3 also at the same locations. Keep in mind that in addition to these podcasts, during the week, you can also follow and participate in the discussion with us of these and other issues affecting Alaska's fiscal and economic condition by following us on the Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets Facebook page and through our posts on Twitter. This week, our top 3 issues are these. First, we explain why we believe oil tax reform is not only justified, but needed. Second, we discuss the fiscal irresponsibility of both how increased K-12 spending as well as increased defined benefits are being pursued. And third, we explain how the PFD is being squeezed from both the left and the right. And now, let's join Michael.
Let's get to it. I mean, I hate to be the broken record, but boy, it's like, Lions, it's Groundhog Day again in the legislature, right? I mean, this is where we're at. Let's start off with the latest and greatest oil taxes. And boy, there's a lot of angst on the part of the right for Rob Yuntz. I mean, there was a whole thing. Dan Fagan wrote an article about how this is how republics die and all this kind of stuff. I mean, in his article about it. But there's, you have a finite resource that's owned by you, the people. You have a finite limited resource. Shouldn't you get the maximum yield out of that since it's only going to be here one time? I mean, I'm just asking as an owner, maybe we should do more, but I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, I read Fagan's piece. It was Hillcorp's talking points. Somebody slipped him the bullet points and he just put words around it. So here's the deal to me with oil taxes. And keep in mind that I was a big proponent of SB 21, that I testified in favor of it. I helped draft part of it. I was a big defender of it in the referendum on it in the subsequent election cycle, and I've been a believer in it in terms of its ability to restart investment in Alaska, and it's proven to do that. But here's the problem. It's in the current environment where we have all this massive investment going on. And we have new production coming in. It's overshot the mark. You can tell that in 2 ways. And this is very simple, very, very simple. You can tell that in 2 ways. If you look at the fall revenue forecast, the fall revenue forecast projects big increases in production. Over the 10-year period, covered by the forecast, projected production levels rise by over 35%, from 467,000 at the start to 640,000 at the end. But now let's look at the revenue side. Yep, we got big production coming up, right? Now let's look at the revenue side. Royalty revenues over that entire period only rise by 1%. Production's rising by 35%. Royalty revenues are only rising by 1%. The answer to that is a lot of the increased production, most of the increased production is coming from federal lands, from which we don't get royalty. So what's going on is state lands, production from state lands is still staying relatively constant. The big rise is coming from federal production. So you would expect royalty to sort of stay where it is over that period. It only rises by 1%. But here's the big deal. And here's what Mike Shower and Fagan and others on the right need to concentrate on. Over that same period, revenues from production. Now, production itself is rising by 35%, right? Revenues from production through the production tax are dropping by 30%, from $940 million at the start to $658 million at the end. And driven by that, overall unrestricted petroleum revenues also fall over the period. Production taxes, revenues from production taxes, which apply both to the state and to the federal lands. So there's we're not getting any problems with the federal lands. Production taxes apply to the federal lands. Production's increasing by 35%. Production taxes are dropping by 30%. There's another way to look at that. We don't have a gross revenue system, but you can calculate the percent take on the gross. And that's a fairly good measure of whether your production tax system how your production tax system is changing. So you can look back at the pre-ACES period, and we had about 17% from the gross. That's what the production tax generated, about 17% from the gross. During ACES, that jumped up to 32% from the gross. Bad, too much, and it disincentivized investment in the state. Dollars went elsewhere. During the first 10 years of SB 21, it came back down to about where it was pre-ACES, to about where it was in the old system, about 16% of the gross. And that's lasted for about 10 years. Now, when you look at the fall revenue forecast, it's dropping. The SB 21 stays in effect, but the revenue from the gross is dropping to about 12%. It's dropping by about 4%. What's going on is that in SB 21, the legislature put in a lot of incentives. They put it, for example, they have 1-year amortization. Usually when you have a tax code to encourage investment, you allow amortization over a shorter period than the life of the investment, right? So you allow amortization over 5 years, maybe, or 10 years.
Right.
And so you can amortize the capital over SB 21 allows amortization over 1 year. So every dollar they put in investment is a credit against revenue. We also have we also instituted what's called GVR, gross value reduction, and that's on new oil from regions or from areas that hadn't previously been produced. That was an incentive to go out and develop additional oil, and that applies both to Prudhoe. I mean, there were areas in Prudhoe that hadn't been developed, and it applies to Willow and Pica and the others. The revenues the gross value reduction is you take 30% of your revenues off the top, exclude that before you start calculating taxes, before you start calculating the revenues that are included in taxes. And then we've got the per barrel credits that are on top of that. All of those combined are hitting in a way in the current environment to reduce one more time or 15 more times, whatever it takes to get it through people's brains, to reduce production taxes by 30% over the 10-year period at a time when production volumes are increasing by 35%. SB 21 has the internal workings of SB 21 have sort of gone wrong. They're overcorrecting for the problems that we had,
which historically in this state we have a problem with, right? I mean, there was ELF and then ACES, and then it always swings back one way or the other. For it, it's even for just a little bit, and then it runs off into the pucker brush in one side or the other. It seems like every time, where it's good for a finite period of time, and then it runs askew. because we're trying to predict market behavior. And of course, all these oil companies, they've got a whole floor full of accountants and lawyers. And the state of Alaska's got 3 people auditing the books versus a whole fleet of accountants and lawyers. And so this is inevitably you have to come back and revisit it every handful of years, I think, to make it work.
Yeah, I don't think this is a way where the oil companies are cooking the books. This is the way SB 21 operates when you get in this environment. What we told Alaskans in 2013 and 2014 is help us increase investment. What the industry told Alaskans was help us increase investment by reducing your take from production taxes. Take a hit from production taxes. Help us. And when volumes increase, that'll result in investment. It'll result in volume increase. When that happens, you'll benefit too. We'll share in the benefit. What's happening now that we've gotten to that point is the exact reverse. Production taxes or production volumes are blowing out, 35% increase. But production taxes, revenues from production taxes are dropping. So when I see people like Shower and others, knee jerking the industry reaction to taxes, oh my God, bad, horrible, we're going to leave, we're going to do that, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. When I see them knee jerking the industry reaction, I get upset because that's not what you should be doing. You should be looking at the numbers. And I've written about the numbers. We got them in the Alaska landmine column. You and I have talked about the numbers on the show before. When the fall revenue sources book first came out, I was just shocked at how much at what was going on with production taxes. You've got to look at the numbers and you've got to look at what's going on. Don't knee jerk a reaction. Now, Wielechowski, I'm not a big fan of the way Wielechowski's proposing to fix it with the limitation on production tax on the production credits, and with the limitation on the related limitation on deduction of capital investments. That's a matter of revenue design. We talk a lot about revenue design on the show. That is revenue design. He's trying to design how to get $400 million. And that's the design he's using. I'm not a big fan of that design because I don't think that's getting at the heart of the problem, which is the amortization and the GVRs. Credits are part of the problem. Per barrel credits are part of the problem. But I don't think that fix is getting at it. But the number's about right. I mean, I've done these numbers a lot. And if you look at gross, if you look at share of gross, and if you look at what would happen if we didn't have these deductions going on in the way we're having them go on in the next 10 years, over the next 10 years, about $400 million is the right number. You and I have talked about this on the show a lot.
Right.
But so I just don't give me your knee jerk, talking points from Hillcorp in the case of closing the Hillcorp loophole, or from the oil companies in the case of the production tax fix. Look at the goddamn numbers and see for yourself what's going on. And what's going on is, now that we've made all these, now that we've developed a tax code that has encouraged making all these investments, now that we're getting to the point where those pay off in terms of increased production taxes are going down. And that's not what was intended in 2013 and 14. That's not what was told Alaskans in 2013 and 2014. And that's not what should be happening, consistent with the constitutional obligation that says maximize revenue for the benefit of Alaskans.
Right. And this is what we've been saying for a long time. There's money on the table and we need to be looking at it. But the second we start talking about it, immediately the right is activated over the fact that we shouldn't do anything more with the oil companies. But we're leaving money on the table. There's money on the table, and we are the owners. And again, it's a finite resource. 60 seconds, Brad.
Well, I mean, and people talk about consistent tax code. We need consistency in the tax. Well, this isn't consistent.
Right.
The fact that we're losing revenue at a time production is increasing, the fact that our take of gross revenues are going down, that's not consistent. The provisions that are causing that are consistent with what happened before, but you have to look at the environment in which those provisions are applying. And it's resulting in a significant, 30% drop in production tax revenues is huge.
Right.
And that's what's going on.
Yeah. How can we have more production yet less revenue in the other end? And that's the kind of the continual question that we should be asking ourselves. There's a lot of factors there, but this taxation is definitely part of it. This is some crazy stuff. And again, the fact that you, as an oil and gas company attorney, former guy in the industry, is saying there's still money on the table, ought to raise the eyebrows for people who are like, no, the oil cut, everything, we've got to be paying attention to this. This is a deal, and it could again help with some of the issues that we're having as well. And as in citizen owners, we should be getting, I mean, the Constitution says that we need to get the maximum yield. I mean, that's what we're supposed to be getting as owners out of this whole deal.
And people say, oh, taking this money away from the oil companies, they'll leave. They won't.
No.
I mean,
they're making more money than God out here. Are you kidding me?
All we're talking about is maintaining the same level of gross revenues. I know we're not on a gross revenue system, but our rate design, the way we design the net profits tax, produces a certain level of take from the gross. And you can see that consistency over time. You could see it before ACEs. You could see it much higher during ACEs of consistency. You can see it coming back down in SB 21. And that's a good measure of whether, you have a consistent result from the tax code. And our take from the gross is falling. And it's falling. I mean, it cannot be more obvious at a time when production volumes are going up by 35%. Production tax revenues are going down by 30%. It can't be more obvious that something's gone wrong, and that the shares have flipped in a way so that Alaskans are not getting the same share that they thought they were getting out of SB 21 and they got out of the first 10 years of SB 1. So for legislators, I mean, I sort of understand the knee jerk against taxes. I sort of get that. But for legislators to not look at the numbers and understand that we're not asking for more, we're just asking for the same share that we got in the first 10 years. We're trying to restore the results we had in the first 10 years. For legislators to not get that,
right, the balance, right,
doesn't reflect well on them.
Right, it's got to be equitable in both directions, and that's been part of the problem. Again, the challenge, it has fallen out of sync, and we need to go get her done, so to speak. All right, we are about 90 seconds. We're about 90 seconds before we hit this. Give me a tease for number 2, Brad. What?
Well, number two is it's going to be another rant on, or another discussion. There we go, discussion.
You're ranting. It's fine. It's okay. We rant here
on defined benefits in K through 12, and the press for additional spending in those areas.
Yeah. Well, I'm starting to wonder, quite honestly, and I guess we can bring this up. And yes, thank you, Anthony. Anthony says, "Oh, please, you've heard worse in the checkout line of Fred Meyers, and you know it." When Brad had the slippage there, yes, he's right. I have heard worse in the checkout line of Fred Meyers. I've heard things when I was like, "Man, I don't have any kids around here, do I?" Because dang. Anyway, in the fact that I'm starting to wonder if this is just all kabuki theater, where they want to lay all this at the governor's feet. They know they don't have the money to do it, but they want to lay it at his feet and try and make him the bad guy in this situation. That they sold a big pack of stuff knowing that it was undeliverable. And I'm starting to wonder if that might be the case. And you can comment on that probably by the end of it. I'll bring it back up, Brad. All right, number 2 of the weekly top 3. I mean, it seems like this is just a repeat from last week and the week before that, and last year. And God, I mean, maybe. So number 2 is defined benefits and K-12 spending. Brad, the gift that just keeps on giving. What's happening?
Oh, it is a repeat. It's probably a repeat from every show we've done for the last 10 years. But I you see all these articles about both K-12 and about K-12 and about uh, uh, defined benefits. I mean, just looking over the range of newspapers in the state, from the Ketchikan Daily News, Representative Bynum, a Republican, proposes a one-time BSA hike. Down on the Kenai, you've got Assembly calls on state to boost school funding. Also from the Kenai, Soldotna joins call for increased school funding. I mean, you got
With no
everybody,
policy change, right? With no policy change. Yeah, exactly.
everybody and his brother out there pushing for increased K through 12 funding. And I can sort of get the need for that. I can sort of see the inflation argument around that. But where's the revenues going to come from? It is the height of fiscal irresponsibility to be facing the kind of budgets that we're facing, the kind of budget deficits that we're facing. And you can see them over the next 10 years. You don't just, you can see it next year. You can see it the year following that. But if you look at the fall revenue forecast, you can see it over the entire 10-year period, in significant part due to the drop in production tax revenues. You can see that the deficits that are sitting out there. And in that context, to be pushing for substantial increases in spending, keep in mind that HB 69 has a $330 million plus or minus price tag next year, but there are 2 additional increments of increases. Then it's automatically adjusted by inflation.
Right.
By the time you get to the end of the 10-year period, SB 69 is $1 billion a year. And for legislators to be pushing that before they have the revenues in place to pay for it is just fiscally irresponsible. I mean, it's Congress. I mean, it's just like Congress. Let's keep spending. Let's keep spending. Let's keep spending. In the case of Congress, it's and we'll keep borrowing and we'll keep borrowing and we'll keep borrowing. In Alaska, it's let's keep spending. Let's keep spending. Let's keep spending. But there's no borrowing that power that sits behind that enables you to balance it out that way. And so it's let's keep spending. Let's keep spending. Let's keep spending. Let's keep growing the deficit. Let's keep growing the deficit. Let's keep growing the deficit. It is fiscally irresponsible. And at some point you see Kenai, you see Soldotna joins call for increased school funding. You see Kenai Assembly calls on state to boost increased funding. You say Ketchikan Republican Jeremy Bynum proposes a one-time BSA hike. All of these people who are pushing for increased spending, not telling us how they're going to pay for it, not talking about the revenue side, at least at the same time, if not in front, to sort of set the stage for the increased spending. All of these people pushing for increased spending and not talking about revenue at the same time is just very frustrating. And it's fiscally irresponsible. We're just going deeper and deeper and deeper. The state's going deeper and deeper and deeper into an unsustainability hole that I'm not sure how we ever get out of. We keep going. Defined benefits has its own bizarreness.
Yeah, I know. The New Reason Foundation commentary on this is like, hello, has anybody been paying attention to this? There are other states that have defined benefits that have worse employment retention problems than we do here. The Reason Foundation brought that up. Like, hey, you saying that this is the magic bullet that'll bring all the new employees back and hold on to the employees you have. And yet they mentioned 2 or 3 states that have defined benefits plans like you want, and they're hemorrhaging people faster than we are in Alaska, which is, come on, this is not the magic bullet.
But Michael, here's the thing on the fiscal side. There's still no fiscal note.
Yeah.
There's still no fiscal note on defined benefits. There wasn't a fiscal note last year. The one they got there was, but the one they got they didn't like because it said it increased the deficit. So Giesel and others just sort of dismissed that fiscal note and said, "Oh no, we're working on another." By the end, there still wasn't one. There isn't one now. These are the same people, the people pushing this bill without a fiscal note are the same people who are complaining about the governor's holding on to the wage study, right? That the governor has the wage study, but he's not giving it out, they claim. And so, he's artificially, tilting the playing field by not giving out the wage study. They've had a whole year. The proponents of defined benefits have had a whole year to do this fiscal note, and they haven't done it, and it's still not done. Now, Chuck, and what that does is give Chuck Kopp and Giesel the ability to say, "Oh, I know we haven't done it yet, but when it comes, we think it's going to say this and say that, and so it's all okay."
This is the Cliff Grow. This is going to save you money comment on the program. Oh, we're going to actually save money on. Show me on this napkin how that's going to work out.
Just show me the numbers. Give me a spreadsheet. I'll run them. If you're right, if that's what the calculations show, fine, then that point goes off the table. But the fact you haven't given it to me, the fact you haven't published those numbers in a year, over a year since this started, the fact you haven't given it to me, the fact the only numbers out there are the ones that you didn't like, so you dismissed it. The fact you haven't shown me the numbers over the entire year makes me a little skeptical of what those numbers are going to show. And once again, it's just fiscally irresponsible to be going down this road, especially without a fiscal note. But even if we had a fiscal note, if it showed a deficit, we don't have the money. And to be pushing forward on these spending programs without talking at least at the same time about revenues, how you're going to pay for them. But to be pushing forward on these spending programs is just fiscally irresponsible. They all the legislators like to claim that, they're fiscally responsible. They know what they're doing. They're looking out for Alaska's best interests. No, they're not. They're looking out for the beneficiaries of the spending. They're not looking out for Alaskans' interests. Running us into a deficit, forcing us to do stupid things down the road, like taxing the oil companies more than the right number from a gross standpoint, forcing us to tax Alaskans more than we should be, is stupid. We need to make these judgments about what we're doing at the time we're doing them, as opposed to passing a spending bill and then putting our backs against the wall on the revenue side down the road and saying, "Oh, well, we'll get to the revenue someday."
Right.
It's just not fiscally responsible. It's not sustainable. It's not good policy. It's not good anything. It's not good for Alaskans. It's not good for all it is doing is not good for the state's overall well-being. All it's doing is putting a bunch of money that we don't know yet where we're going to get it from, and we don't know the impacts of that, the adverse impacts of that.
We don't know
putting
exactly
a bunch of money in certain people's hands.
Yeah, we don't know exactly how much. We just know it's going to be a gob, right? I mean, that's the thing. We still don't even know.
Right? Well, we've got the fiscal note on HB 69, and it's huge.
Yeah. Well, I was talking about defined benefits, but yeah, exactly. We still don't know where it is. And, Brad, I said it earlier during the break before we came on that I'm starting to think that maybe maybe there's a cadre out there that understands all of a sudden, or maybe they knew this from the beginning, that there's not enough money, but they said, well, we'll just run on all these things. We'll run on pumping up the BSA. We'll run on defined benefits. We'll run on these programs. We know there's not enough money for it, but we'll just lay it all at the governor's feet. That's really one of the only explanations for rushing HB 69 through the whole thing that they got here, that they want to lay it at the governor's feet. The governor, is going to veto it. And then they could say, look, we tried, but it's, tall man bad. That I'm starting to wonder if that's the kabuki theater we're dealing with.
Could be, but they're not doing their constituents. They're not doing the ones they claim to be helping any good in that regard. And they're giving the governor a free talking point. The governor can bounce it back by saying, "Look, you have no revenues to cover this." And in the case of defined benefits, you have no fiscal note even to tell us how much it's going to be. You're running us into the ditch fiscally. You're being fiscally irresponsible. That's the governor's response to all this. and they're just giving him that free pass on that. I mean, to most, I think to most Alaska families that makes sense. Look, if you don't have the revenues to cover it, then why are you voting for the spending? If we don't have in our household the revenues to cover the vacation to Hawaii or to wherever we want to go, we don't take it. We don't spend the money until we have the revenues. And I think that's a powerful talking point that they're giving the governor. And
Right.
and they're not doing their constituents. They're not doing the
Well,
interests that they claim to be representing any good, because they're just running them into a wall.
we can get into that in the next segment with the whole Zach Fields thing. But, I mean, hey, don't worry. Scooter Kendall, he wrote an opinion piece, said he's a fiscal conservative, but he believes that all these things need to be. I don't know if you caught that opinion piece in the ADN. Hey, I'm a fiscal conservative, but, and, again, goes on to say, we really need to educate, education, and, I mean, it's all about constituencies. Who's getting paid? Follow the money.
And if you're a fiscal conservative and you want to advocate for K through 12, fine, do it. But do it in a fiscally conservative way. Talk about where the revenues are going to come from. Pass the revenues at least at the same time. Advance the revenues to pay for this stuff at least at the same time as you're advancing the spending bill. That's what a fiscal conservative does.
Yeah.
Fiscal conservative doesn't lead with spending and say, hey, we'll catch up with revenue somewhere down the road. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Well, exactly. How do you pay for it? Big question, still no answer as to how you pay for all this. Nobody has a talking point. Go ahead. Final thought.
How do you pay for it? And then who pays for it? Once you know how you pay for it, then you know who's paying for it. And then you can discuss whether it's reasonable. It's a reasonable approach to be taking money out of those people's pockets to advance the other side's interests. I mean, that's part of what you get when you get the how do you pay for it. You get the who pays for it at the same time, and then you can have an honest discussion about whether it's good policy.
Was it Zen Kelly asserted last night in the KPBSD? There was a school board meeting last night with like 130 people on the Zoom call. They asserted last night that HB 69 has policy and is fiscally responsible. Saying it so is not making it so.
Fine.
There's a cadre of people out there that are just like, oh, it's fine. But the whole thing is, the whole answer to this, and not to get too far down into the weeds on HB 69 specifically, but the answer is always just give us the money. Just shut up and give us the money. We'll figure out the policy later. The policy is what's creating part of the problem. If you don't work on both of these things together, history shows that if we just shut up and give you the money and you'll get to the other part later, you never get to the other part. And again, how do you pay for it? Who pays for it? No answers. Crickets, 100% crickets on this, Brad.
Yeah, show me the T chart. Show me here's your spending over here. Show me the incoming. Show me the revenues over here that's paying for the spending that you've got that's paying for the liabilities you're creating through the spending. Just show me the T chart and show me how it's that'll show me how it's fiscally responsible. They can't do that because they don't have the revenues. I mean, even if they wipe out the PFD, they don't have the revenues to pay for this over the 10-year period, to pay for, and this isn't just a one-time deal, folks. This is $330 million in the first year. That's sort of the buy-in cost, right? That's, you've gone to the auto dealer and he says, oh, it's only $330 million down. Don't look at the back end of this thing.
Don't look at what the ultimate cost is. It's only, you can afford it. It's only $300 million a month. You can afford it.
It's, I mean, and that's what they're trying to sell it as. But it's a bill that sets up a procedure, sets up a statutory formula that grows and grows and grows and grows and grows and grows till at the end of the 10-year period, it's $1 billion. So when you do your T chart, when you show me the liability and show me the assets that are gonna, the income that's gonna offset that spending, show me $1 billion. Show me what grows into $1 billion at the same time as we've got production taxes, a big chunk of the revenue to the state, going down by 30% over that 10-year period. Tell me how this balances out. Show me the T chart where it balances out. And they can't.
They can't. Yeah, no, that's the problem. They just can't. I'm sorry. Don't answer. I don't understand the question. Right? I'm sorry.
I know it's fiscally responsible, but I don't understand what T charts are, and I don't
don't
understand all.
understand the question. What are you trying to say? This whole thing is just, it's astonishing to watch, but this is where we're at right now. This is fiscal reality in the state of Alaska. And that's the thing. They're ignoring everything else.
It's fiscal fantasy. I mean, for Scott Kendall to go
Yeah.
out and
Oh,
argue that he's a fiscal conservative.
I'm a fiscal conservative. I just, I was like, wait, who wrote this? Scott Kendall? Yeah, okay, never mind, Scooter. I don't think you keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means, right? I mean, it's, I'm a fiscal conservative. Really? Is that but that's the thing. That phrase is getting thrown around a lot. And I don't know if you caught Rob Myers's article in The Watchman talking about where we are politically in the state of Alaska, but he takes a knife to that, and he's like, there's no most of the people in the state are not fiscally conservative. And that's part of the problem. We've gotten into this big spending habit, and it's everything to protect it. Jeannie was talking about, again, that the Zoom meeting for, here we go, 128 Zoom viewers watching the KPBSD meeting last night. Lots of condemnation for critics of school spending. And of course, no shortage of platitudes. Everything that I've seen, all the commentary on this is that it's all emotional. Oh, it's for the children, and we need the spending. How do we pay? It doesn't matter. We just need to pay. But they're failing right now with the money where it doesn't matter. It's because you're not giving them enough. But wait, we gave them a lot back in 2015. No, it doesn't matter. There's no self-analysis on any of this.
Yeah. And no fiscal analysis whatsoever. I mean, we'll get into this deeper into the next segment, but it's also these same people, the House majority, excuse me, that's pushing this bill, pushing the K through 12 bill, right? And they said no on oil taxes. No, we're not interested in oil taxes. We're not interested in taking on oil taxes. We don't want to do that. So how do you ever make this balance? How do you ever make this proposal out there balance? You're not even trying. It's just spend it all, and then we'll figure out later what the hell we're going to do having done that. No, that's right. Not how a fiscally responsible state works.
Yeah, no. We'll pass it, and then we'll see what's in it. Right?
There you go. The Nancy Pelosi view.
We'll pass it. We had to pass it to figure out how much it was going to cost and what was in it. I'm just like, what? That's not how it's supposed to. But okay, I mean, you do you. Number 3 is the PFD. I mean, do you even PFD, bro? Zach Fields wrote a piece. And again, it was about the supersized. We got all these things we need to spend this money on, and we can't afford to give you. In fact, one of his lines was, we wasted 3.8. How did he put it? We wasted 3.8 billion in spending by giving PFDs out, like it was a huge waste. I was just like, what? The what? That's exactly what he actually laid it out and said, this is what we spent it on. And it was a huge waste to do it. We can't fund PFD needs and also pay large PFDs. So the last 5 years, we've squandered 3.8 billion on PFDs. We squandered it. Your money. We squandered your money by giving your money to you. A portion of it, not even all of it, just some of it. We could have done so much better. We know better than you how you should spend it. If we give it to you, you squander it. I mean, that's just the height of arrogance here, Brad.
Yeah. So Zach Fields' piece is sort of the takeoff of my point, which is that the PFD is in a squeeze play from both the left, Zach Fields, and the right. Zach Fields' op-ed is just horrible. I mean, the title of it is "The Reality is We Can't Fund Alaska's Needs and Also Pay Large PFDs." And now the definition, by the way, the definition of large PFDs is anything over $1,000. Used to be anything over $1,750 or anything over $1,500. Now large PFDs, I mean, it's changed the terminology, do policy by changing the terminology. Now it's anything over $1,000 is a large PFD. But what Fields is saying is, look, we need to take we need to take the money out of the PFD and transfer it over. We need to treat it like just another CBR, a bunch of money we can play with. Take the money out and transfer it over to spending. There's nothing in here in this piece. There's nothing in anything Zach Fields has ever said that recognizes who he's taking the money from. He's taking the money from middle and lower income Alaska families. He's not taking it from the top 20% in terms of share of income, significant share of income. He's not taking it from non-residents. He's not taking it from the oil companies. He's taking it from middle and lower income Alaska families. And he's essentially saying we need to tax middle and lower income Alaska families to pay for this spending. Zach Fields also says, in conjunction with Andy Josephson as part of the House majority, we don't want to tax the oil companies. We don't want them to pay their fair share. We don't want to go fix SB 21, the problems that SB 21 is showing as it ages. We don't want to fix them. We just want to keep taking money from middle and lower income Alaska families because it's easiest to do that. Because the subtext is because it's easiest to do that because they don't send lobbyists down here. They don't make big campaign donations. They don't bother us in our offices. They don't send hordes of workers down here to have performative art on the front steps of the Capitol. It's easiest to take it from working middle and lower income Alaska families because they're working. They're trying to make a living. They're trying to just get through life, and they don't bother us as much. So what we've done is we found the soft spot in the fence, and we're just taking as much out of that soft spot in the fence as we can. But it's not just Zach Fields. Zach Fields is a big problem. Andy Josephson is a big problem. They are not responsible. They're not fiscally responsible. They are taking the money they're taking the money in a way that has the largest adverse impact on the overall Alaska economy and is by far the costliest to Alaska families.
And their constituencies are the ones that are being disproportionately affected by this, right? I mean, Zach Fields represents a big chunk of the lower income group in the Anchorage area, and yet he's the one that they're advocating taking a lot of that money from. I mean,
when you start digging into Fields' district as it's currently constructed, it's really a bunch of limousine liberals. It's really people who are wealthy, live close to downtown, but live in the wealthy areas close to downtown. And so it's more that he does have a poverty section in his district, but it's much more people who say that they want to do good things. They want to increase K through 12, but they don't want to pay for it. And so Zach Fields is responding to that by saying, okay, well, let me spend, and I'll find a way to spend that doesn't take it out of your pocket. And you can praise me for all this good I'm doing for the spending, and it's not coming out of your pocket. So you can continue to support me, continue to give me donating. When you have people who knee jerk against fixing the Hillcorp loophole, there's nobody and say, oh, well, we don't want to give any more revenue. Well, look, the spending's already there. The governor's already signed the spending. We're already in deficit. We have already set up all these spending programs. They're not going away. We tried that in 2019, didn't happen. Governor hasn't tried again. They're not going away. So we've got these spending programs. We've got an existing deficit. Oil taxes would help fix that. And by helping to fix that, would reduce the pressure on the PFD, would make the ability to hold the PFD a lot easier because we'd be paying for that spending that's already there. I'm not talking about the additional K through 12. I'm not talking about defined benefits. I'm just talking about paying for the deficit that's already there. That would help fix that by reforming oil taxes to get back to what we thought we were passing in 2013 and 2014. When people on the right opposed that, they're pushing PFD cuts. And they're pushing us into they're pushing the state into a situation because there's nothing left. We've got the spending already. We've got a deficit already. And if you can't reform oil taxes and do other things that increase revenues, increase alternative revenues to PFD cuts, you're just putting more and more pressure on the PFD. So the PFD's caught in this squeeze play. It's caught in this squeeze play from the left by Zach Fields and others saying, oh, we got to spend, and the PFD's bad. We've got to spend, and so we'll just take it out of the PFD. And we've got people on the right saying, well, yeah, spending's there, but I don't want to use these revenue sources for this, that, or the other reason to pay for it. So the only thing that is left when the legislature gets to the end of the day is the PFD. The PFD's caught in this squeeze play from the left and the right. And their middle income families are the ones, middle income families, which is like 60%. I mean, by the time you take lower middle, middle, and upper middle, like 60% of the population, middle income families are the ones that are being squeezed. And that's and the legislature's doing that. My point is, from both the left, from Zach Fields, and from the right, from legislators on the right who are just having these knee-jerk reactions to fixing oil taxes and closing the Hillcorp loophole.
Becky Schwanke just dropped the big bomb in the chat room. She says, wait till you'll see their ads to the health budget at today's closeouts in the House. Oh, Lord. I mean, because again, this was the next phase of the attack was the healthcare cuts, because they're starting to close out things. They're trying to close that $2 trillion budget gap at the federal level. And so they're going to stop paying for a lot of the Medicaid things. And you could see the states already, we're going to have to pay for all this. We're going to have to. No, you just shut it off. Shut it off. We don't want to take the money. Shut it off. Find a way around it. If the federal government can't fund it, then shut it off. And here's where we are. Here's where we are right now. This is madness at this point.
It is, Michael. And it's madness because it's madness for a lot of reasons. But yeah, okay. So the healthcare budgets, that's going to be yet another spending category. And that's going to be yet another problem and yet another hit on the PFD. We wonder why middle income, and you and I've done the analysis. You and I have talked about the analysis. It's middle and lower income Alaska families that are doing the out migration. The top 20% is actually growing in the state. The number of top 20% households in the state is actually growing. It's middle and income Alaska families that are leaving the state. We wonder why that is. Well, we're taxing them. We're taxing them through PFD cuts. We're taking income out of their pockets so that the top 20% non-residents and oil companies don't have to pay. We're hitting middle income Alaska families hardest. And the economics of staying here just aren't working for them anymore. And they're leaving. But the economics of being in the top 20%, since you don't have to pay for any of this, since it's being funded entirely by middle and lower income Alaska families, the economics of being in the top 20% in Alaska are great. So we're getting more and more and more of those.
It's the reason for the inflow of the top 20% and the retired population, while the working class population is exiting the state. And again, this creates what we talked about earlier, kind of that doom loop of there's a smaller and smaller pool of people to draw from who are actually paying for that. And eventually it's just going to be paid. Here's the thing. When the PFD's gone, and Zach Fields said the quiet part out loud, we're going to get into this in the next segment, but he said, while most Alaskans recognize, he's talking about PFDs, if we paid a $1,400 PFD, that would decimate basic services and we'd have to pass new taxes. And he says, while most Alaskans recognize we'll have to generate new revenue at some point to fund basic services, which basically they're going to have taxes. They know it. They're talking about it now. You've been slamming me and Brad and everybody else for talking about, hey, taxes are coming. And we should have a discussion about what's the best form of tax for that, because otherwise it's going to get thrust down our throats. And everybody's like, la, 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 la. They're talking about it now. They're talking about it out in the open. The PFD will be gone. And then they'll come to you and go, oh, man, it's, it's so sad when free rides die hard, but now you're going to have to pay, sugar lips. Right?
Yeah, after the top 20% non-resident oil companies had the free ride all those years by being able to push the burden off to middle and lower income Alaska families. Look, if there's one thing that maybe is the theme of today, is look at the damn spreadsheets. I mean, Becky's right. Others are right. When you look at the spreadsheets on K through 12, when you look at the spreadsheets on defined benefits, when you look at the spreadsheets on healthcare, they just don't work. Increased spending on healthcare, they just don't work because we've not set up the revenues to be able to pay for it. We're just plunging ourselves like Thelma and Louise. We're plunging ourselves off the cliff with nothing set up underneath. But on the right, look at the damn spreadsheets also. Look at the damn spreadsheets on oil taxes. Look at the damn spreadsheets on what our take of the gross has been. Look at the damn spreadsheets on what's happening to revenues from production taxes as production volumes are going up. Look at the damn spreadsheets, and you will see the problem that is being created later in life in SB 21 by all of the things that we sprinkled in there. There's a problem in terms of revenues not rising, state revenues not rising in the same way as production taxes or production volumes are rising. Look at the damn spreadsheets. You can't, it's not appropriate for the right to complain about the left, increasing spending without having revenues. It's not appropriate for the right when the right won't even look at the damn spreadsheets, their own damn spreadsheets, and figure out what's going on with oil tax revenues.
It's not appropriate. And Brad got all silent for a minute. It's not appropriate.
Well, I was thinking about the FCC for a moment.
Yeah, no, we're on Facebook now, mother. Anyway, it's look, it's the whole thing is astonishing to watch. Like you said, there's plenty of blame to go around on the left and the right, and we could name everything that's been happening, but we literally have two groups in this state now. It's not Democrats and Republicans. It's not left versus right. It's not even conservative versus liberal. It is big government spend at any cost versus smallest government possible people. That's what we have left. And the problem is the smallest government possible people, they're a minor minority at this point.
But Michael, all taxes are an issue. The smallest government possible people are using that knee jerk about taxes, about revenues to overlook what's going on, what's truly going on with oil taxes, what's truly going on with the way SB 21 is operating. I view myself as a small government person, but a small government person at least looks at the revenue sources and sees whether the revenue sources that you're relying on, that you're using, are producing reasonable results.
Brad, we're down to the last 2 minutes here, so I'll give you a chance to summate on everything today. But I mean, I think it comes back to our same mantra of, how do you pay for it? Who pays? And why can't we live within our means? I mean, I don't know if I summated it properly, but that's pretty much the big three things that we keep talking about here. And it's of all things, whether it's the spending on the defined benefits in the schools, whether it's proper management of the PFD and not spending twice as much on the management fees as other funds are doing. There's a million things out there, but nobody wants to talk about the other things.
Yeah, nobody wants to talk about them, and nobody wants to do the analysis. Nobody wants to do the spreadsheets. They all want to talk about them, but nobody wants to do the calculations because they know that the calculations would disprove what they're talking about. And that's true on the left in terms of K through 12 spending, this pie in the sky K through 12 spending, and it's true on the right in terms of oil taxes and this knee jerk on oil taxes that we've got going on the right, because they haven't looked at the spreadsheets. They haven't done the analysis of what is happening with oil tax revenues in this new decade that we've gotten into with SB 21. The problem is not as much the failure to do the analysis. People who are just shooting off their mouths without doing the numbers. The problem is as much that as it is the policies the policy roads that we're going down.
Well, everything we're seeing is being driven by emotion. Like you said, they don't want to do the spreadsheets. They don't want to look at reality. They don't want to look at the fiscal note. They don't want to ask the hard question of who pays or how do we pay for it. They just want the spending. because emotionally we need it.
Or on the right, they just want the no taxes. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Doesn't matter that we need the taxes to restore to get a share of the increased production. Doesn't matter. They just want no taxes. Period.
Right.
End statement.
Yeah.
Well, the PFD takes the hit.
Yeah. So you're getting taxed already. Anyway, Brad Keith Lee, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Brad, thank you so much.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me. Well, that's a wrap for another week's edition of the weekly top 3 from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Thank you again for joining us. Remember that you can find past episodes on our YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, and Substack pages, and keep track of us during the week on Facebook and Twitter. This has been Brad Keithley, Managing Director of Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We look forward to you joining us again next week for the next edition of the Weekly Top 3.